Today on The Nation Speaks, are parents who challenge their local school boards domestic terrorists? That's what the FBI aims to find out. Virginia mom Asra Nomani says parents won't be intimidated. And in America Q&A, we ask how much input parents should have in public school education. Next, banks warning Americans of what's coming if new tax rules go through. Virtually every bank account in the country will come under IRS scrutiny. That's what Paul Mirsky says, Vice President of Independent Community Bankers of America. Finally, in our second America Q&A, we ask if Americans are okay with giving the IRS power to monitor every bank transaction over $600. Welcome to The Nation Speaks. I'm your host, Cindy Drucker. We've all seen the videos by now. Parents clearly unhappy, attending meetings and challenging school boards on policy and curricula. Some of those exchanges have gotten rather heated. Sometimes police won't let parents in, and sometimes police take parents out. But does this constitute domestic terrorism? That's what the National School Boards Association thinks, according to a letter it sent to President Biden. It says, acts of malice, violence, and threats against public school officials have increased, and these heinous actions could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism and hate crimes. The Department of Justice seems to agree. This week, just days after receiving the letter, it directed the FBI and U.S. attorneys to create a strategy to deal with this alleged increase in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against school board members, teachers, and workers. Attorney General Merrick Garland also wants to set up a task force and create dedicated lines of communication for threat reporting, running from local police all the way up to the FBI. Joining us now is a mom at the forefront of this battle, Asra Nomani from Fairfax County, Virginia, the VP of Strategy and Investigation with Parents Defending Education. She's also a former Wall Street Journal reporter and author. Asra, welcome.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here, Cindy. Thank you.
So if anyone is going to be investigated by the FBI, you'd probably be near the top of that list. Can you tell me what prompted all of this? How did school board meetings, of all things, become so contentious?
Oh my gosh, great question. Because, you know, a year ago, I knew every single one of my school board members, but 2 years ago, I didn't. And what happened is that in June 2020, schools shut down, as everyone knows, because of the COVID pandemic. Schools went remote. And all of a sudden, two things happened. Parents were able to see what their kids were being educated, and then activists used this opportunity of remote learning to push their social justice agenda. And they had the opportunity, because of the tragedy of George Floyd's killing, to declare that our school systems were systemically racist. And guess what? They had the fix for it, and they were going to ram all their bad ideas through the system. And we started noticing.
So what are some of those bad ideas that you started noticing?
Oh my gosh. So the first one that I saw at my son's high school, at Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology, is that our mostly Asian, mostly immigrant parents were all of a sudden accused of having too many privileges. And what they did is they used the opportunity of this systemically racist America to then change the admissions policy to this very advanced school and eliminate the merit test. So that was the academic side. Then what schools had to do was get their bad ideas into the minds of kids. And so I'm going to show you a pretty shocking poster that was put up in Alexander Hamilton High School in Los Angeles Unified School District. And what you will see is the language, F America, with the C replaced by KKK. This is native land. And then all of the grievances, settler colonialism, indigenous genocide, slavery, mass incarceration, Jim Crow. These are all realities that we have to deal with, but we don't need to demonize America. It's shocking that this is happening in our public school system. But the problem is that it's happening with taxpayer money, and that's what's really troubling. What we did is a group of moms and I started an organization called Parents Defending Education. This is what's happening nationwide. Parents are paying attention. They're asking the school board serious questions about how money is spent, the ideology that's being promoted in the classroom, and these school board members don't like getting these hard questions.
So how did it escalate from there? What happens? I mean, we've seen a lot of videos at these school board meetings where, parents are getting up, showing, posters or books or different things and, opposing or challenging the school boards. Why is the FBI involved?
Oh my gosh. So what happened, as an example, on September 23rd, a mom named Stacy Langton stood before the Fairfax County School Board, and she presented evidence of this book as an example called Lawn Boy, which has a scene of pedophilia promoted in this book, and then another book called Gender Queer with graphic, pornographic pictures that you couldn't even show. Well, guess what? The school board interrupted her precious 2 minutes repeatedly and then hurried off for a recess because parents started booing them. So this is an indication of exactly, the kind of opposition they refuse. And then lo and behold, a week later, as these kind of scenes are repeating themselves across the country, the School Board Association sent a letter to President Joe Biden, sent up an SOS and said, oh, we're getting so many threats. And of course, violence is unacceptable, but we're a nonviolent movement. We're parents, we want to tuck our kids to bed at night. And so what happened? To our shock, 5 days later, the U.S. Attorney General, Merrick Garland, has now said that he will summon the powers of the FBI against those who are protesters. He never mentions the word parents, but everybody knows that that's what they're talking about. So they've declared this war on parents. And, your viewers are very smart, and they know if people protest this strongly to critics, they're hiding something. And what everybody needs to know, after all my years, working at the Wall Street Journal, is that you got to follow the money. And they are protecting a machine of contractors in our K through 12 public school systems that are raking in millions of dollars.
Has there actually been violence at many of these meetings? I looked at the National School Board Association letter that they sent to President Biden, and in the footnotes they have a lot of references. What I'm reading is New Jersey mask mandates spark school board disruption. Sheriff deputies called to tense meeting, mask protests bring police, meeting degenerated, unruly crowd. Has there been real instances of violence that could be qualified as domestic terrorism?
Well, as a journalist, you know that they're using the scare words like ignites, sparks. These are all words when you don't actually have action or violence that you create in order to manifest this false narrative. And that's exactly what's happened. So these cases are all of parents that are just really frustrated.
So one of the issues that repeatedly comes up is that they're teaching critical race theory in schools. And I want to dig into this a little bit because in the National School Board Association letter, they called this out specifically. They said that critical race theory is not taught in public schools and remains a complex law school and graduate school subject well beyond the scope of K-12 classes. Can you clarify for us what exactly you mean by critical race theory? And I know that, many of the parents, when they go up, that's what they're talking about, that you see posters of it. We don't want this in our schools. What does it mean?
So critical race theory is an ideology of thought that was developed in the 1970s and 80s by a man by the name of Derek Bell. I've got books back behind me that chronicle this ideology that emerged. And what is really important is that it's called critical race theory because the idea is that it is critical to look through the lens of race at every problem that we have in society. And so what they do then is they put forward this thesis that it's systemic racism that plagues our educational system, our judicial system, our penal system, every system in society. And the trickle-down effect then is the curriculum and the ideological workshops that are being promoted throughout our school system. So who's going to go to a workshop on critical race theory? But they're going to go to a workshop called anti-racism workshop, because then you're an anti-racist. And I'll just give you an example.